what is happening geopolitically in the world, the energy crisis, the high cost of energy, it is really becoming more and more important for the energy and automotive sectors to collaborate even more closely together. To find out how that's possible and what needs to happen, I'm very pleased to welcome our next speaker. He's the Vice President for Strategy at Elli. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Niklar Schirmer.
Good morning, everybody. I see you all awake. That's perfect. I hope you also had a great party last night. Thank you very much to the entire Hubject team for organizing this event once more, the 10th time. Really great. And as I have been already quite some years within this industry, I see this event also growing year by year, so I'm very, very happy to also start this morning with you, looking into what the Volkswagen Group, what Elli is thinking about the future of charging, the future of energy. So I'm very happy to be here with you. Let me start with the crises. I think we went through a lot of crises. We are in crises. A couple of years ago, we started to really take climate change more seriously, not seriously enough. Big global crisis on climate change. Then Corona hit everybody. Everybody was only talking about Corona, and we forgot a little bit about the real crisis. And now the geopolitical crisis comes into the game, and this brings us the energy crisis. And now bringing together the climate crisis, the energy crisis, we now see that we really, really have to move into an accelerated net zero emission world. So it's not enough to talk about zero emission mobility, about zero emission economy, about zero emission energy systems. It's not enough. It's important to talk about how can we do it faster, how can we accelerate it, and how can we take it much more seriously. And now I could be talking about energy efficiency, which is one part of the game. And I think we learned this from all political discussions today, that energy efficiency is one of the keys. But what I want to talk about is about bringing more intelligence to a system that's already there. And that's, for me, one of the big keys to really leverage on technologies, on assets that we already have out there. So if we look into the energy system, and if we look into the, in that case, German energy system, we see today that we are curtailing about 6.2 terawatt hours of electricity, of green electricity, of solar and wind, simply because our grids are not able to cope with it, and simply because there's no flexibility in demand that can take all this excess energy. Many people are not talking about that. Most people have been talking in the last years about the criticality of load-related bottlenecks in the grid, about what happens if there are 20 cars charging in one street? And we were all confronted with the difficulty how that would be happening. No one was talking about all this excess energy, how to get that into the car. And actually, there's a lot of chances in there. So having said that, the toughest stage of the energy transition is still in front of us. Here in Germany, we are in the phase of really ramping up renewable energies at strong scale, at strong factors. So until 2030, we simply want to triple the generation of renewable energies. That's a very big challenge. And at the same time, we are facing even more fluctuation in the generation. We are facing even more potentially curtailed renewable energy. So we also have to look into the solution for that. And one part of the solution is pretty near. It's the electric vehicle. And this industry is scaling even more. So until 2030, we will have 15 million BEV, all in all, almost 20 million electric vehicles here in Germany on the road. So there is a huge change, and there's a huge chance at the same time to really let these two systems work together, the renewable energy generation and the flexibility of charging. If you just take these 15 million BEVs on the ground, we have at least 750 gigawatt hours of storage capacity, which is about 20-fold what we now have on storage just installed base. And so when I think about that, this is really a huge battery on wheels. It's the largest battery, and the beauty of it is people have paid the car for mobility, so the storage has not been paid for. It's not for free. There's no such thing as a free lunch, but it's there, and we must use it. So the big challenge is actually, or the big vision must be to combine these two mega industries. And we have talked a lot yesterday about public charging, about really getting the road down with your car and have seamless customer experience. And what we have not talked so much about, and what I think the next step of this industries have to talk about, is really how to get these two mega industries together. Because everything what we will be doing in the mobility part, in the automotive part of the industry, will also have an impact on the energy part. And the energy part, what's happening there, as I already designed and said, has a big impact on the mobility. But we have a common goal. We have to work towards climate neutrality. So maybe in a couple of years, these two sectors, energy and mobility, will be called in the future maybe as one sector. Maybe that's the future. Okay, getting down a little bit to the earth, we have piloted some flexibility, some intelligence in the grid because we believe we really have to accelerate things, we have to try out things, and it's the best what you can do is really to get things done. And so we have partnered with a German distribution system operator, with Midnetz. That's the grid area around our Zwickau plant. And here two very interesting topics come together. From the energy side, that's one of these countries, or one of these parts of the countries where you see a lot of renewable energy. If you're just driving around, so you see a lot of windmills, and many times you see the windmills just stop. They're not running. And that's because they produce 3 times the energy in this area as they need the energy. And then the second part is what we bring on the table is we bring the cars. This is a huge production plant in Zwickau. I mean, hopefully everybody has already visited Zwickau. It's a great plant to see. And what we are trying there is really to use the signals from the generation and bring incentives to the customer to charge when the electricity is overflowing, and bring it to the customer with a lower cost. So we incentivize the customers by using this otherwise curtailed energy. So the project is still running. Hopefully we will be having results very soon, and so we will keep you updated on that. So essentially, we are talking about two things if it comes to the combination of energy and the mobility market. The first one is talking about load shifting. And this all has to do, that's why I plotted it, it has to do with the energy price curves on the market. What we are seeing now is huge price spreads. There are very expensive times in the day and very inexpensive times in the day. So it's very attractive to move your charging session from the part where it's expensive to the part of the day where it's inexpensive. If we look one step further, and we will be talking about bidirectional charging, about vehicle-to-grid, then you can do it even more and use these spreads even more often because you do not need to drive to get the battery empty. You can empty it and you can refill it, and you can run your cycle through these spreads. And so that looks like a very interesting business model. And so this is not only one example of one particular day. It's real, it's happening every day. If you just look at this 1 week, and you see this light blue line on the graph, That's the price spreads that we are running through the system day by day. And what we are seeing at the energy market now is really what we had anticipated to happen in 7 to 8 years from now. And we see it just as of today, as we are having critical resources in the energy system missing, as we have the lack of gas and we have the need for flexibility. And by the way, what you also see, these green curves here, that's the generation of solar and wind. And what we will be seeing in the future is really the excess generation of solar and wind, much higher than the demand. So in very few years, we will be coping day by day how to use all this electricity for free. Zero generation cost, but excess. So what does that mean for the customer? For the customer, there are two options that he can work on. And these are two options that he has and that he currently does not have in the fossil energy in the fossil energy cars, in the internal combustion engines. He has an electricity price, which is set somewhere. We are talking now about high prices and low prices, and we are having a strong discussion about that electric charging might be more expensive than fossil fuels. Very critical debate. But with electric vehicles, we can give the customer the chance to have two levers on this. We can reduce the cost by smart charging, shifting the charging during the day. And the second one is, if we let the customers participate in bidirectional charging, we give them another incentive. And that's the way to secure the TCO advantage towards any kind of fossil fuel. And I think that's a missing part in the discussion. So I read a lot of headlines on that recently, that the electric vehicle is not competitive against the fossil fueled vehicle, against the internal combustion engine. And nobody is talking about the opportunities that we can give and that we can bring to the customer. So that's, I think, a very big point that we have to work on. And this has two advantages. It's a win-win situation. First win is on the grid and the energy system. We need to build less copper in the ground if we do it more intelligently. We need to build less stationary storage. And we are getting faster in the rollout of renewable energies. By that, we are much faster in the decarbonization of the entire energy system. And the second win is on the customer side. So it's really significant TCO reductions as long as the customer has the chance to plug in the car once he's parking the car. So that means we need to also roll out many, many more private charging stations, decentral charging stations, and make them accessible to the energy system. So, as I said, smart charging is on the way today. There are companies out there. We also have a smart tariff in our offer. Bidirectional charging is on its way. And if I have learned one thing during almost 9 years in electric mobility, everything takes a little longer than we expected, but then it comes. And I think here with bidirectional charging is a little bit similar. So we have to stimulate the market from the electric vehicle side. Volkswagen Group will emit bidirectional charging with the next generation cars. The ID bus is out there. Bidirectional charging will be part of the ID bus. Second, we talk too little still about international standardization and use of energy system design into electric vehicles. We have a standardized approach in the ISO, that's very good, but we have not a standardized approach how to bring this electric vehicle to the energy market. We have talked a lot about behind-the-meter business models and vehicle-to-home optimization, but we have not yet talked enough about vehicle to grid and vehicle to energy market. And that's a discussion that I really want to stimulate and that I can only motivate you all to really participate in. We need to do that together, and we need to do that internationally. So the electric vehicle is the first energy asset that crosses borders from here to there in one day, and the energy market and the grid operators have never seen such assets before. So naturally, the system is not designed for that. So let's work together on that. And then we need the regulatory framework that really enables flexibility, that really gives incentives to market participants and finally to customers. And we are still way far away of that. We really need all the metering technology to enable that. We need to have the 15-minute values. We really need to have the billing systems to go through that. We do not even have a right definition of a mobile storage in our energy laws. There are a lot of things happening, and we are very happy that also in the coalition treaty in Germany, there's a lot of very good prospect to that, but now we have to accelerate that. And then our vision might be coming a little bit more true. Once this mobile power bank, this battery on wheels, will connect the mobility and the energy sector, then we will have another key driver for zero emission and a key enabler for a greener economy. I thank you very, very much for having had the chance to talk here. Thank you very much to ICNC22. And if you want, I will be outside afterwards in our Elli booth, at the ID bus, at the recreation area. Feel free to talk to me. Thank you very much.
But Nicholas, don't go away yet, because we're going to ask you some questions here up on stage. I believe we already had a few participants send in the questions via the app. So we already have the first one from Karin. She asks, what could be incentives for EV owners to let grid operators use their battery? Prices for flexibility are low, and there are concerns with regard to the lifetime of the battery.
Many aspects, actually. So incentives from the energy system are usually twofold. One is the incentive that comes from the energy market. That's the price curves that we are going through. I think there are a lot of reasons to bring these incentives to the customer. So there are price signals, that's very good. And they are stronger than ever. And the important message is they will remain strong. So the flexibility signals, they are highly dependent on the solar generation. And as long as we do not get it to let the sun shine at night, we will have these price spreads during the day. So that's the good message. Second one is the grid operators. So that's the second part of the equation, that's the grid fees. We see in many countries that grid fees incentivize customers' behavior. We do not see it yet in Germany, at least not very strong. But for example, if you go to Spain, your behavior is really strongly incentivized by very high grid fees if you use the electricity at the wrong time. So, but you can also put it vice versa. You are incentivized by having much lower grid fees if you do it a little bit smarter. So the grid operators will only do that if we have a regulatory system in frame that enables that. And it's the role that a grid operator has traditionally not taken yet, to really incentivize their customers. But I mean, we're working on it together. We're discussing that. And we will need very strong political signals to go into this direction. My belief is, or my sentiment is, that the political signals are much stronger than ever and that we are on a good path. Now we have to accelerate it. And the last part is the lifetime of the battery. That's what we hear from many, many customers. If I bring my battery to any kind of flexibility service, then someone is using my battery and will be degrading. And here, I think we have the entire industry has a big topic in communication. If we charge the car in a very smooth fashion, upwards and downwards, we have much less degradation of a battery than anticipated. It could also be the battery care mode, actually, which will help the battery to be even stronger. And just one side note, charging at a supercharger, at high power charging, is really working on the battery's lifetime. Doing bidirectional charging with 11 kilowatts, it's pretty healthy, actually. So that's the message that we have to bring to the customer.
OK, thank you very much. We have our next question from Zheng Fan. He asks, when will Volkswagen Group cars be fully bidirectional ready? How much does this bidirectional technology jeopardize the battery in terms of lifetime? So you just touched upon this. If you would like to add anything about that?
Yeah, as already said, we are on the path to making our cars bidirectional ready. That's one part of the equation. The other part is on infrastructure side. The other part is on the regulatory side. Jeopardizing the battery, I think I referred to that. No, from our point of view, not a concern, but rather an opportunity.
OK, thank you very much. Let's have a look at the next question. From Alexander, he asks, how are you planning to let the customer participate on the spread benefits? Are you planning to provide respective dynamic tariffs?
Very important question. So first message, yes, the customer will participate in that. If the customer is not incentivized, he will not participate. Second, does the customer participate on it by a detailed 15-minute described bill? No, for sure not. The customer wants to have it user-friendly, convenient. And there are all kinds of customer incentivization systems that we can go through. And I think there's another mega industry in the room, here, not here, hopefully some parts are here, which is the telco industry, what we can learn from strongly in that respect. Because it's all about tariffs. It's all about managing tariffs and incentivizing customers. I think the telco industry gives us a lot of excellent examples. And we are learning how to use these tariff structures towards the customer with the MSP business. We also, everybody here that's working on the MSP side has this direct customer relationship, tariff-based, giving incentives, giving paybacks to the customers, giving free mileage, giving paybacks for CO2-friendly charging. So there are so many chances that we can use way beyond just bringing just simple euros down. Gamification is also one part. So I think there's a lot to explore.
All right, thank you. Do we have another question? Yep, we do. So Sai Sagar asks, do we really need vehicle-to-grid? If BTM business models, V2HB, and Second Life battery business models become more viable for providing grid stability and positive environmental impact?
Well, we have to start with behind the meter. And we do start with behind the meter. It's always a question of the market design. If we are only talking about behind the meter, then we only talk about the optimization of one single party. If we are talking about in front of the meter, we are able to really bring the value to the entire energy system. That's where we need to go from a systematic approach, and that's also the more cost-efficient and the more beneficial approach. And by the way, not everybody has a house with a solar panel on it. So in future steps, we have to make sure that we enable in front of the meter business models everywhere where cars are parked for a longer duration, at workplace, at home, also if you are parking at night in the hotel. That's where we have to go, and that's much more than behind the meter optimization.
All right. Any more questions or comments? Oh, there is from Thomas. How does Second Life play into this scheme?
Well, second life, always the question, what is the second life in? Yeah, so let's talk about second life as stationary storage. That's the next generation business model that's also doing storage businesses in the industry. In the end, that will be one player in the entire flexibility game. And I think here, even on the Europe campus, we have great examples of second life or first life, but could also be second life stationary storage batteries. That's the next generation that's coming later. So then we are maybe not any longer talking about the mobility and the energy industry. We are talking then about the after mobility and energy industry, which will be another great industry merger.
Okay, I think we have time for a few more questions. Björn asks, what about frequency control inertia with EVs? Does Elli have any plans on going into this market?
Actually, there are a lot of value pools for flexibility, and frequency control and inertia is, of course, one of it. That's maybe currently in our energy system one of the more obvious that is needed. In terms of market size, I think it's limited compared to what we see with the wholesale market businesses. But what we see, for example, from the discussion about the new grid codes on the European level, frequency control and inertia will play a major role. And we all still don't know what the real physical role will be if we are getting to less inertia-driven systems. So if we are getting all the rotating masses out of the energy system, we will have to deal with that much more carefully. And by the way, we need a market design that enables the business models for that. So then we are ready to do that.
Thank you for that answer. Our next question comes from Khaled Zaki. He asks, how can we motivate an EV driver to resell his or her battery energy, knowing that he or she might struggle to charge again? So great charging infrastructure is key to promote bidirectional.
So I think the industry went through several steps and stages. So a couple of years ago, we would have talked about simply getting public charging infrastructure on the ground, then we can work on the mileage problem. So I think we have achieved a lot in that. So it's not the question that you are able to charge your car again. Of course, we have to scale up that. We have to bring many, many more charging points out there as we are bringing much more electric vehicles out there. So that's the mobility charging question. I think we are on track to solve that. Still, we need to accelerate. But to motivate the EV driver to participate in that does, of course, and I don't know whether this is part of the question really meant, it does not mean that the driver leaves its charging station with an almost empty car. Of course, we will see artificial intelligence in the system that always makes sure that the driver is leaving the charging station with a reasonable amount of battery filling. And reasonable amount actually does not mean it's plenty full or it's just 20%. Reasonable means that it's convenient for the next journey that he will be doing. So we will have to learn and anticipate the mobility behavior of the customer to get to the next stage. And that would also include knowing where the next public charging station is that he might hit. So today it might be still feeling, struggling. Tomorrow, I believe this will be solved.
Okay. I think we have time for maybe one or two more. So if we have some more, yeah. Okay, Spunik asks, why use cars as a virtual battery instead of stationary storages, as the capacity of the cars available is not predictable?
Excellent question. It's not unpredictable. That's the point. It's statistically predictable. If we have a large amount of electric vehicles, if we have a cloud of mobile storages, then it gets really predictable, and the one participant in the market will always be there and will always be predictable. yes, it's not predictable from the single view of a charging station what will be the next car that comes with which charging behavior. But if you map the entire system on the mobility side and look into what is the mobility behavior of the cars, things get really predictable. So what we need is we need the IT to get into that, and we need to get the data access from the customer to participate in the system. And then, last sentence, the mobile storage will always be the cheaper option than stationary storage. Remember, the mobile storage has already been paid for mobility reasons. So that's the competitive edge.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Let's go for it.
One more? Okay,
one more. There's
fine.
so many questions being sent in. Let's take a look at one last one. So, from Jürgen. Oh God, ISO 1511820 supports bidirectional charging. Will Elli jump on this new standard, and is there already a roadmap?
Yes, so of course the ISO standard is the international BD standard. That will be the base for a lot of things. And I say a lot of things because we need the regulatory framework to bring all these cars into the energy market. So the communication is one thing, and I mean that's more than communication, the 1511820. But it's also just one part of the game. And we have to really bring now all these building blocks, these Lego bricks together and really build up the new system out of that. So I'm very happy to join forces with everyone out here in the room. Thank you.
Nicholas, you can see there's a lot of interest and a lot of questions, but we do have to leave it there. But as you mentioned, everybody is free to find you later in the day throughout the conference outside. So once again, thank you very much for your answers, and thank you to our audience for such fantastic questions.
Thank you very much.